Some people leave quietly. They pack their things, they say goodbye, and they walk away clean. But Marcus Mercer did not leave quietly. He left loud in front of a black luxury car, on a bright Tuesday morning, pointing his finger like a judge, and the woman he was pointing at could not stand up to face him. She could only sit and cry and hold the wheels of her chair like they were the only solid thing left in her world. Dana Mercer had been sick for 14 months. Not the kind of sick that people bring flowers for. Not the kind that fills a room with sympathy cards and casseroles. Hers was the slow, grinding kind. The kind that takes your legs first, then your independence, then if you let it, your sense of self. A rare autoimmune condition had settled into her spine like an unwelcome tenant, and no amount of prayer or physical therapy had convinced it to leave. In those 14 months, Marcus had changed too. Slowly, in the way that people change when they are trying to convince themselves they are doing nothing wrong. He started working late. He started taking calls in the driveway. He started looking at Dana with an expression that was not quite pity and not quite resentment, but something uncomfortable living right between the two. He had told himself on many quiet evenings while Dana slept that this was not the life he had signed up for. He had a company to run, a reputation to protect, people who expected him to be sharp, in control, untouched by messy personal circumstances. Dana, in her wheelchair, in her soft cardigans, with her trembling hands and her quiet tears, she had become, in his mind, a complication. On that Tuesday morning, Marcus came home to the house they still shared and told Dana they were done. He said it the way a man says something he has rehearsed, firmly, without eye contact, already moving toward the door before the sentence was finished. He told her to leave. He said his name was on the deed. He said she had people she could call. Dana looked up at him from her wheelchair. Her voice was not angry. It was quiet and bruised and very tired. She said, "Marcus, please don't hurt me. I can't walk." She did not mean it only physically. She meant it in every way that a person can mean something like that. She meant, "I am already broken enough." She meant, "I trusted you." She meant, "I am sitting here and I cannot run from this." Marcus did not soften. He straightened his jacket, picked up his phone, and walked outside. The black car was waiting. A woman named Renee sat in the back seat. Renee, who worked at a firm Marcus had recently partnered with. Renee, who had been on those late-night calls. Renee, who did not know, or perhaps did not want to know, about the woman in the wheelchair inside the house. A security guard stood near the iron gate, watching everything with the careful stillness of a man who has learned not to get involved. He watched Marcus point toward the street, watched Dana cry, watched the red arrow someone had drawn on a photograph later to mark Renee's face in the car window. He would remember what he saw. People like him always do. What Marcus did not know, what he had never thought to ask, because powerful men often forget to ask, was what Dana did for a living before she got sick. He had always thought of her work as small. Background noise. She had been a writer, a quiet, private woman who sat at a desk and produced stories and creative content for a growing media company. He had smiled at her laptop the way people smile at a child's drawing. Sweet, he had thought, harmless. He had never looked at the company's name on the contracts she signed. He had never asked who owned the rights to the platforms she had built, the audiences she had cultivated, the intellectual property that had quietly tripled in value over the past 3 years. He had never read the operating agreement that made Dana Mercer not just an employee, but a founding partner and majority stakeholder in a media company, now worth more than his own. 3 days after he pointed her toward the street, Marcus received a certified letter. His lawyer called him within the hour, voice tight with something between urgency and disbelief. The commercial property where Marcus held his primary office lease, the sleek building with the glass facade, the address on all his business cards, was owned through a holding company. That holding company traced back to a single individual, Dana Mercer. She had purchased the building 2 years earlier through a quiet investment, before her diagnosis, before any of this, when she had been invisible to him in a different way. She owned his building. She owned the story. She had owned it all along. Marcus did not call Dana to apologize. Not right away. Men like him need time to metabolize humiliation before it can become anything resembling honesty. He sat with it for 2 weeks, turning it over, looking for an angle where he came out less exposed. There was none. When he finally came to her, at the small apartment she had moved into, the one with the wide doorways and the ramp she had installed herself. He came without the jacket. Without the car, without Renee, he came as something much smaller than the man who had stood over her in the driveway, pointing at the street. Dana did not let him in right away. She held the door and looked at him for a long moment, and in that moment she felt none of the things she had expected to feel. No triumph, no bitterness. She felt mostly tired, and then, underneath the tired, something quieter, something that had survived 14 months of illness and one very loud Tuesday morning, something that had held on even when she could not stand. She let him in. She made coffee. She did not pretend the driveway had not happened. What was said in that apartment over the next 2 hours belonged only to them. But when Marcus left, he left differently than he had arrived. And Dana, sitting at her kitchen table with both hands wrapped around her mug, allowed herself one small and private thing. She allowed herself to feel what she had always been, even when no one in that driveway could see it.